At Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiaga. Thank you very much for choosing Metropole Television at this hour. If you're just joining us, this is your official economic review. Let me introduce the panel that is joining us at this morning. For the next couple minutes, we're joined by Josh Onsando, who's a public policy analyst and political strategist. Josh, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Simba. How are you?
Fantastic. Happy to have you around, man. We're also joined by Odhiambo Ramoge, who's an economic analyst and a CEO, LM Capital. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Simba. Good to be back.
Good to have you around as well. We are also joined by Ken Nyaga, who's the chairman of United Millers Association. Mr. Nyaga, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
Fantastic. We are happy to have you around. Let's begin with you, Ken, this morning. Now, the Rift Valley region is recording the price of a 90-kilogram bag of maize at 2,000 shillings from 2,700 in the counties of Trans Nzoia and Uasin Gishu. Now, millers who have spoken to Metropole TV, however, say that they are buying maize from the region at 2,500 in Nairobi, indicating that the fall in the price was going to have a minimal effect on the price of flour. Now, market players are also blaming cheap imports from Uganda as a driving force in the declining prices of maize, which has now seen a 2-kilogram packet of Jogo retail at 99 shillings, down from 109. Soko is selling at 96 shillings, down from 104, with a Mama going at 96 shillings. This, as the Agriculture Ministry has already projected, the production of the crop will decline by 20% this year, following the delays in grain and the effects of the fall armyworm. All right, let's look at that average price of maize for the farmers in the country, and you can actually trace it all the way to around 3,152 and 59 cents. All the way, we're talking about 100 kgs, and you can actually see exactly where we are from in recent years. I believe that's from 2017 to 2020 end. Fantastic. Ken, welcome to Metropole TV. Let me introduce you to this conversation. Question being, do we anticipate for the cost of flour to rise any further this year on the back of good maize supplies?
Okay, thank you very much, Simba. Basically, I think what is happening right now in the market, I would say we are not anticipating actually any increase prices of maize flour. But I think it's not that there is an oversupply of maize or anything like that. The biggest problem we have is consumption. I mean, the consumption rate of wheat has really gone down. And this has been a cost from last year. We've been operating at very low levels. Actually, we have never gone this far to almost 20%. So that's why you find it's like people are saying there is a lot of maize. There is no maize. If actually there is an average of the demand goes up just a little bit to almost 60%. That's the time you know actually there is no maize in the country. But surely people have been affected so much. We have even some of the millers closing down because now they whatever is there in the market, they cannot be able to sell. The demand is so low. So that's the reason why you find things are moving the way they are.
Yes.
The maize coming down, it's not because there is a lot of it. In actual fact, very few are importing, let me tell you. Very few are importing from Tanzania and Uganda. And Uganda, we cannot talk so much about it because some millers avoid Uganda because of their aflatoxin issues. But now, we normally get from Tanzania, and even Tanzania, they are very minimal because whatever is in the country right now can be able to sustain the demand that is there, and the demand is very low. So we are not anticipating anything, the prices going up. We are looking at it now. I think it will maintain the same level where it is, maybe going down with the 2 shillings, coming up with 1 shilling, something like that. But yes, the real cost of all this is the demand. demand has been so low from last year. We've seen so many actually millers even shutting down. Around 20% of the millers they have already shut down. So the market that is every miller is competing for it. So that's where you find now you have to come bringing it down your price. The real issue behind this is not about oversupply of maize. It's actually the demand that is low.
Yes. All right, Ken, let's also talk about the other factors that we know have been going on in this specific ministry. Would you say that the government has come in to mitigate any other factors that would sort of affect the demand and supply chain in the country? Let's talk about that value chain. There was a lot of conversations from last year up to now. Would you say that now the ministry has actually addressed all those challenges that were affecting millers last year?
Really, Simba, not so, eh?
Yes.
Not so, because if you find what has been happening from last year, basically, it is like the market has just been driving itself. I mean, with these effects of COVID, actually, it's like everybody now sat, you know, everybody was not involved in all this. So basically, it is the market that drove itself up to where we are. We
Yes.
cannot say it's a Ministry of Agriculture. We cannot say there is government that has been controlling or looking at this. This is all the drive. I mean, the COVID effects that has brought us up to this level. But I can tell you for sure, also Ministry of Agriculture, especially with the farmers, they are doing so much in terms of the issues of aflatoxin. They are helping the farmers on grain management, post harvest issues. So that we don't lose so much. But so far, I would say that maybe this one is so much because of what the government has done. I think it's just the market driven itself, driving it. So that's where we have found ourselves in this.
Yes.
And I think to take credit on this, I mean, it's COVID. It's COVID. That's the way we are looking at it, we people in this field of milling.
Ken, another question that anybody would like to put across to you is the extent to which cheap maize imports are still affecting the price of the commodity locally. Is that a factor? Because that's exactly what the Ministry of Agriculture also looked to weigh in on last year.
Simba, not really. As you already mentioned there before, actually the maize from North Rift is, we would prefer maize from the North Rift. Because
Yes.
one of the things there, maize from the North Rift does not have aflatoxin.
Yes.
In actual fact, from Uganda and Tanzania, but mostly Uganda is bad for aflatoxin. But for Tanzania, there is part of Tanzania that actually maize is free of aflatoxin. And this maize from Tanzania, where they are free of aflatoxin right now, bringing it to Nairobi to reach here with almost 2,000, 2,900. So I don't know, I don't see the miller would go to buy maize from Tanzania when you can get one from the north here, which is clean maize, aflatoxin free, and is landing in Nairobi at around 24, 2,500. I mean, not so many people really are bringing, and I don't think that one would be the reason why we have an oversupply. And from the word I told you, I don't think whether it's an oversupply. I think the issue is about the demand.
Yes.
So low, and if it just slightly goes up, that's now Simba would be talking of something else. That's when people realize that we don't have enough meat in this country. So.
All right, Ken, as we clear, Ken, this morning, you've just put it on the demand, which is quite low right now. When do we expect that demand is going to come back to normal, Ken?
Okay, if I compare it from last year, Bwana Simba, I think the demand has been coming up gradually. Last year we were doing at almost 20%. But right now, we are looking at it the other day, and I can see we are around 40.
Yes.
40%. So, we just hope as the economy improves, not even so many businesses will start coming up. So, the demand, we just pray that everything opens up, And we pray that the government may also open the economy. We forget this mambo of lockdown, not really the lockdowns, but the curfews and these other things, so that the economy can be able to run for 24 hours.
Yes.
And after, out of that, I think, Simba, you call me within 2-3 months, you will now be talking about the shortage of maize in Kenya. You'll be asking me what happened. We earned a lot of maize, and it's not maize that we earned. It's the demand that has come.
Yes. Fantastic. Yes. Ken Nyaga, Chairman, United Millers Association, thank you very much for taking time off your busy schedule this morning to speak to us here at Metropole Television.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. All right, let's move on. Now, Kenyan members of parliament now want the Petroleum Cabinet Secretary stopped from freely using the billions of shillings collected under the Petroleum Development Levy, PDL, as well as stopped from having a hand in the reviewing of the formula for the calculating of petroleum products prices in the country. Now, the members of parliament riding through the Petroleum Products Taxes and Levies Amendment Bill 2021 want the Petroleum Development Levy Act 1991 amended so that parliament assumes full control of how the fund is used. Now, the members of parliament now want to assume the power to debate and reject the various levies attached to the pricing of fuel, while also insisting that the committee on delegated legislation should not be final without reverting to the House. Out of the 25.88 billion petroleum development levy funds collected in the 2020-2021 financial year, the National Treasury disbursed 1.6 billion to the State Department for Petroleum for fuel stabilization, 2.2 billion to the Ministry of Energy, and 18.1 billion to the State Department for Infrastructure. A report, however, indicated that the money disbursed to the State Department for Infrastructure and the Ministry of Energy was misapplied since it had stepped out of the intended purpose of the Petroleum Development Fund in accordance with Section 4 of the PDL Fund Act of 1991 and the PDL Order 2020. Just before we cross over to Odhiambo Ramogi, let's look at the levies that have been affected on the various fuels in the country, and you can see super petrol attracts at 26.85 shillings a levy, diesel attracts 26.63, and kerosene attracts 21.49. Let's add on to the taxes that are also attracted to this. Then you can see super petrol attracts 21.95. Also VAT is at 9.42 shillings. Diesel excise duty is at 11.37, VAT 7 shillings and 97 cents, kerosene 11 shillings and 37 cents on excise duty, and then on VAT 7 shillings and 25 cents, therefore forming more than or close to half of the price of that commodity. Comparatively, let's say the levies trend from 2015 to 2019-2020, they've been working in a lot, has been increasing as well. Now, Odhiambo Ramogi, this is a time that tonight, actually, by midnight, we do expect that EPRA is going to live, actually not the EPRA, Matiang'i is going to live to the promise that the price of fuel is going to come down considerably low in the country. But a lot of conversations that I've been having around the cost of energy in the country. Now, the members of parliament want to say that the CS, petroleum and energy should not be given the power to actually review the formula that EPRA uses to cost a litre of fuel, diesel and kerosene in the country. Is that the way to go?
Well, it is a necessary step, but not a sufficient step.
Yes.
It is necessary in that there is need to oversight the CS in charge of energy or in charge of petroleum. Parliament is finally playing its role. In their advocacy, I can mention that yes, they turned down the Finance Bill 2018. They shut it down, but the president vetoed their decision. And so they have been consistent on this matter and have spoken against it in the past. However, I think they have had a very laissez-faire attitude towards the issue of cost of living, partly because they are overpaid. I think they are one of the most highly paid parliament in the world, not just in Africa. And so they are a bit insensitive to the plight of the public. But partly because, well, just the quality of representation we have needs review. But all in all, finally, they are doing their duty and oversighting the CS. You cannot have the CS have power to review the pricing formula of EPRA. And the CS has power to use these levies as he deems fit without necessarily reverting to Parliament for approval. That's just too much power. And I think then, clipping some of the CS's wings would help us. The calculation you have done tells you that the number of levies and taxes on petroleum is just almost half of the whole cost of fuel.
Yes.
That is not progressive. It is not progressive at all. Partly because fuel affects everybody, really. It cuts across board, those who have resources, those who don't have resources. It deteriorates the cost of doing business, but it also deteriorates the cost of living. And having something like that would significantly affect the growth formula or the growth agenda of the country. And so it's a step in the right direction, but it is not sufficient. I think there's still a lot of work to be done in governance, just to ensure that there is no corruption, there's no wastage herein.
Pretty much. All right, let me bring in Josh as well. Josh, I'm just going to start off with you on that same question. Is it necessary to say that, well, the CS, petroleum, should not be given the power to actually influence the pricing model of fuel in the country? And do you think that this is the right step towards addressing the cost of fuel in the country?
Thank you, Simba. Perhaps I'll request your permission to go back in the conversation a bit and back to the chair of the Millers Association.
Yes.
And he did mention that part of the reason why the prices are depressing is because there is no demand for maize. And I think that is being a bit conservative with the truth, because people who are consuming maize are not starving or dying. So I think there is an issue of formal demand and informal demand.
Yes.
And speaking very anecdotally, Simba, I happen to know of 2 posho mills around where I live. One in a place called Gidogoro and another one right up the road in Ruaka.
Yes.
And I can tell you, since COVID, the lines in those 2 places have been much longer than before COVID. So what COVID did is people are now more conservative with their spending.
Yes.
And so they'd rather go to the posho mill, buy maize, go to the posho mill, mill it, as opposed to going to the supermarket and buying. So there's an issue of formal demand vis-a-vis informal demand.
Yes.
So formal demand might have gone down. It doesn't mean that people are not consuming maize. Now on to the question about fuel levies. I don't think in as much as we are saying that we are taking away the power from the CS to determine how EPRA determines or sets prices for a litre of fuel, I don't think we're taking away that power, because that power does not belong to the CS in the first place. And I think there's been a bit of misrepresentation in terms of what the bill seeks to correct.
Yes.
And what the bill seeks to correct is that the CS has the power, because we are talking about a 1991 Act of Parliament, and we are applying into 2021. And the CS then gets to determine, once we collect these levies, what will happen to them.
Yes.
So, for example, a bulk of the levies we've collected in the last 1 year went to the Ministry of Infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
No one is telling you what those monies were applied towards.
Yes.
No one is telling you what projects they went towards. No one is telling you, in fact, the CS has so much power, as Ramogi said, that those wings need to be clipped, that he can even circumvent the budgetary process to apply levies however they seem fit. So I think in that regard, this is welcome. Whether that will necessarily lead to a reduction of the cost of fuel, I'm not sure, because what you're saying is we'll keep the levies as they are, But for you to determine where these levies will go, then you need approval from Parliament. And I think that's only fair. I mean, the reason we have three arms of government is because we have an executive, a legislature that is supposed to oversight the executive, and we have a judiciary, which is the last resort dispute resolver. So I think yes, it's a step in the right direction. I'm not sure whether it necessarily will lead to lower cost of fuel, but as Ramogi said, we have a CS who has too much power, and that needs to be clipped because of the balance of power between the arms of government.
Yes, fantastic. Then, Odhiambo Ramogi, let's therefore look at where the bone of contention is. And I beg your pardon, let me just take you back to these figures that we have on exactly how we spent that money that was collected in 2020, 2021. Good. Now, out of the money that we collected, let's look at where majority of that money went. Treasury disbursed 1.6 billion to the State Department for petroleum for fuel stabilization. Mark you, 1.6 billion only. 2.2 went to the Ministry of Energy, 18.1 to the State Department for infrastructure. In fact, majority of the money that we got from this levy went to the State Department for infrastructure. For fuel stabilization, we just got 1.6 billion. Why? Is it a CS who just doesn't care about the state of affairs in the country when it comes to the cost of energy of the Ramogi?
Yeah, I had mentioned to you that Parliament is one of the most highly paid parliament in the world. Of course, our civil service is equally very well taken care of in terms of remuneration and some of the benefits they have. The divide between those who are making policies in government and making laws in government and those who are actually paying the taxes, the divide is huge.
Yes.
And so more often than not, these things don't affect them.
Yes.
He can afford to drive 3 V8s on the road at any given day for 365 days a year, and he really won't feel it because it's a very small portion of his income. But yeah, the figures you've shared have no sense at all. There is no justification. There's no explanation. The CS has not explained to anyone, musicians, someone waking up and give 18 to the Ministry of Infrastructure for maintaining roads, and you see available, and it's very little accountability framework around it. The engineers at Ministry of Infrastructure no longer hold to account construction guys to ensure that the roads they build last long, because they want these roads to start enjoying part of this money by the second year. And when I say the roads are enjoying the money, I don't mean roads need money. I mean engineers are enjoying that money in the name of the roads.
Yes.
So you find roads that have been built, and 6 months down the line they have potholes because an engineer somewhere at the Ministry of Energy approved substandard work so that he can get money for maintenance from the fuel stabilization levy. And it's a very unfortunate scenario, and that's why I say that even though the move by Parliament is necessary, it is not sufficient. There is a lot that still needs to be done in terms of governance. There's a lot that still needs to be done in terms of reviewing of the whole formula itself, even as my colleague mentioned. And so, yes, I agree with that, that is the way forward.
Pretty much. All right, now, gentlemen, let's then talk about the big elephant in the room. And I know you guys are also waiting for that EPRA review tonight, because we do expect that by midnight tonight, they're going to reduce the cost of a liter of both petrol, kerosene, and diesel. Now, Josh, international crude prices are at their highest they've ever been. This wish for the country to have cheaper fuel, is it a possibility? Going by, now, Josh, you gotta give me time on that. If indeed we have 18.1 billion going to the State Department for infrastructure, And the only amount of money that we needed just to stabilize the fuel prices in the latest review was just 3 billion. Does it look like a possibility? If we can say, instead of giving 18.1 billion to the State Department for Infrastructure out of that levy, then why can't you send that money to stabilize the fuel prices in the country? Given by the fact that every infrastructure development that we want to do in this country, we borrow.
Yeah. It's a sad state of affairs, Simba. First of all, let's go back to the levy we increased last year.
Yes.
Specifically for this purpose when oil prices were low.
Yes.
That fund has collected, in my estimation, to date about 15 billion. Treasury says they can no longer fund a subsidy because that fund has run out. Now, here's what is interesting, Simba. Fuel levies are not used for capital expenditure. They're only used for maintenance.
Yes.
If there's something that is difficult to audit, it's maintenance. Because if you're building a new road, you see, there was a road here yesterday, today there's no road. Or rather, there was no road yesterday, today there's a road. So then, as a citizen, you can say money was spent here. But you know, when it comes to maintenance, an engineer, as Ramogi said, will say there was a pothole here, today there's no pothole. How am I to say there was no pothole there if I didn't pass there yesterday? So I think it's a serious issue with how we are applying these funds, and I think Parliament is right in saying that some of those funds have been misapplied.
Yes.
And I don't know, I'm not very hopeful about significant review downwards tonight.
Yes.
Because if you're collecting money to fund, to put in a fund that is supposed to subsidize fuel prices later on, and then you take 90% of those funds and apply them elsewhere, that is no other way to describe that except a misapplication of funds. You know, as a citizen, you lose words. You can't even describe it in words. And unfortunately, that is the government we are dealing with. I think this is a government where you have technocrats, you have legislators, you have bureaucrats who are more interested in rent seeking than the quality of life of the average Kenyan. And that's why, for example, you say for every infrastructure project we take, we are borrowing. The reason we are borrowing is because, and I think I've said this here before, is because we focused on brick and mortar economics as opposed to bread and butter economics.
Yes.
So we have to borrow because we have to do big projects, because with big projects people can make kickbacks. You don't make those kickbacks, for example, if you're increasing agricultural productivity. So I think this is just a culmination of histories that we've had since 2013, particularly, and unfortunately, there is a move by Parliament to correct it now. But as Ramogi mentioned, I mean, we've had a Parliament that is the most incapable Parliament I think we've seen in the history of this country and probably in the history of Africa.
Pretty
so
much.
If you ask me, it's too little, too late.
It's too little, too late. Odhiambo Ramogi, we take a short break, but I will open with that question. Does it look like indeed, if the best we can do is mismanage these funds, the latest levy that we've been paying for the diesel levy, wow, it was mismanaged. This one clearly is also indicating that it was mismanaged as well. That's the petroleum development levy. It looks as if, should we take an action to say, let's reduce the cost of fuel in this country. Indeed, we do have money for a subsidy. It looks like it is. Does it really mean that Matiang'i's promise for tonight's review to reduce the cost of fuel in the country becoming a possibility once we come back here with Odhiambo Ramogi and Josh Onsando?